Hello and welcome to Cycling Insights, the podcast that is presented by Letap Australia and Drops and Hoods. Whether you're a Tour de France fan, love riding with your mates, or you want to challenge yourself, maybe have a ride on a little bit of gravel, this is the event for you. For more information, visit letapaustralia.com, and for the option with some gravel in it, dropsandhoods.com. Matt Keenan with you, joined by Amanda Spratt, and it's Spratty's Travels. We're going to turn this into a travel guide, Spratty. Where do I find you this time?
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's a bit every time I'm in a different hotel room, but currently in Davos, Switzerland, en route to Stelvio for my altitude block before the Giro. So, yeah, I think we'll have to keep this a theme. I'll make sure I'm somewhere different every time we speak.
So throughout today's episode, we're going to touch on the Giro, the men's Giro, and your Giro, which is coming up. Have a look at Peter Sagan, who is going to actually ride one of the gravel events at Unbound in the US. Ellen van Dijk, won an incredible performance in the hour record. Alex Manley, your teammate, dominating in Germany, in Thuringen. What a performance. But let's kick it off by talking about the men's Giro d'Italia. And I want to know, where were you on Saturday and Sunday, and were you in front of a television?
Most definitely, yes. I'm always a cycling fan at heart. I actually had a 5-hour training ride on Saturday. And those who know me know I normally don't wake up very early, but I actually got myself up a bit earlier than normal, got my 5 hours done, came back, was sitting in front of the couch watching, just hoping Jai could do something on that last climb. And we actually had the landlord from our apartment come and knock on the door to talk about something at the apartment with the 1.5k to go. So I'm just in front of the television trying to scream at it. And Maya went and got the door for me, luckily. But
good work,
yeah,
Maya.
It's hard to describe to someone else who's not so into it as a very proud Aussie. But yeah, I was screaming, as I'm sure so many Australians were screaming at the TV watching him. And I don't know how you do it in commentary, trying to stay calm and commentate through it without sort of getting excited.
Well, you got to let yourself go a little bit, and that's part of the joy of it, is you can let your guard down somewhat. And you're meant to be neutral within commentary, but I was commentating only for Australian audience, so you can be slightly more biased. But Jai is something like you, Spratty. I think I first commentated on you when you were maybe 16 years of age at the Bay Crits. I've seen Simon Clark from when he was about 15 years of age doing track races. I reckon I first saw Jai Hindley as a 16-year-old at the Tour de Perth. So when you've watched someone grow up, you're emotionally invested in wanting to see them successful. And to see him put the ride in that he did, and the moment that you saw Carapaz start losing the wheel, I went from commentator to sports lover for sure. It was such a good moment.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I just think the teamwork in that moment, you saw Lennon Kemner coming back from the breakaway, and then he just gave his last bit that he had. And I heard an interview with Jai saying there was no moment on the radio where they spoke or anything. Like, Kemner just knew exactly what he had to do in that moment. He just got on the front, gave his last pull. And yeah, when Carapaz cracked, I think everybody just started screaming and knew that this was the moment, and that, just willing him to the line to get as much time as he could on Carapaz. And I think for me, what's impressive as well about Jai's performance there is we saw him get second in the Giro in 2020, and not taking anything away from that. But I think the quality of competition, I mean, the 2020 edition was COVID. You had the Giro overlapping with the Vuelta. So, the field was not probably as strong as what we saw this year. And this year if you look at the people finishing behind him, we've got Carapaz, who's been a Giro winner before, Nibali, Mikel Landa. So I think... Yeah, the people he has beaten to win that and the way he did it is, really, really impressive.
Your point about 2020 is spot on. And I think that's been something that's also been hanging over Jai's head, is that question of, was it a fluke? Because you know what it's like battling with injury. 2021 was not a good year by Jai Hindley standards. So that actually just amplified the questions. And to be perfectly honest, coming into it, I thought Jai would go top 5, maybe get onto the podium. I didn't have him as one of the favourites to win before the race got started.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough with the run-in that he'd had into it. And even if you look at some of the earlier stages in the Giro, I remember watching the Blockhouse stage, and he was sort of hanging there, sort of dropped, and then they slowed at the front, and that's what enabled him to come back. And then you sort of thought in that final sprint, okay, he was well positioned. Bardet sort of had to come around. I can't remember who was on his wheel dying a bit. So even then you were thinking, top 5 is probably realistic. You weren't saying, he's the favourite to win the Giro. So I just think the way he was able to handle himself throughout the whole 3 weeks and come out so strong in the final. And I think he only lost 7 seconds to Carapaz, I think, in the final time trial. So
he did.
I think before that they were saying he needed something more around 30, 40 seconds. was what they were saying. But in the end, I think he did a really brilliant time trial as well.
I was one of the people saying that too, Spratty. I said he needed 30 seconds. And that's the best time trial he's ever done. 15th in a time trial at World Tour level is his best ever time trial. So that's really good progress. And to lose only 7 seconds to Carapaz, who finished 10th, that's enormous. And on your comment before about the quality of this field, Carapaz is the Olympic champion. He was third at the Tour de France last year. He's won the race before. It's not as if you get lucky winning any Grand Tour. And Jai did not get lucky. He avoided bad luck by riding really good position. So he's 26 and he hasn't ridden a Tour de France yet. And obviously in Australia, that's the race that captures everybody's imagination. And I think he is less known now that he's won the Giro d'Italia than Cadel was when he finished second at the Tour de France. So I'm hoping this year for Jai that he goes to the Vuelta a España and can challenge to win that, rides the Worlds in Wollongong, and next year targets the Tour.
Yeah, that would be great to see, and I totally agree with that. I think it would be a natural next step to go to the Tour de France, and also nice, I read that it was Bora Hansgrohe's first ever, I think, Grand Tour podium even, and they've got the win with Jai. So, yeah, I think that would be a natural progression for him, and I think it's also for Australian cycling perspective. I saw Paolo Manaspa, who was a sports scientist who worked with the under-23 group there for many years, also alongside the elite women, elite men. He's been, a big influencer in Australian cycling. And I saw he posted a photo of I think it was the under-23 AIS group. And in that photo, you saw Lucas Hamilton, Michael Storer, Jai Hindley. And you just saw the caliber of riders there, and looking at all three of those riders, how well they're going now. I think there's a lot of proud people at home who have sort of had a part in their journey. And only 26. I would have thought Jai was older than that. So I think there's many, many good years ahead for all three of those riders.
Yeah, it was a really cool photo. I think Nick Schultz was also in the photo, who's now part of your team across at Bike Exchange. One of the other things that's come out of it for me is his consistent progress. And often in Australia, we see a lot of riders win junior world titles and then not really go on. And Jai wasn't a junior world champion. He was good as a junior, but he wasn't a superstar. And then in the under-23s, there was the 2017 Baby Giro. Pavel Sivakov won it. Lucas Hamilton was second, and Jai Hindley was third. And then across at Tour l'Avenir that year, I think it was Egan Bernal that won it. Lucas Hamilton might have been about fourth, and I think Michael Storer was ninth, and Jai Hindley was 10th. So he was actually number 2 and 3 in the pecking order in the under-23 program for a long time. And it just goes to show the benefit of perseverance and not getting distracted by anybody else's path and just sticking to your own path.
Yeah, I think so. And it's also just showing there's not always one way to get to the top either.
Yeah.
And people develop at all different rates. I know from a personal perspective, I was coming through with riders like Mariana Vos and riders like that were successful really, straight away into the seniors. So I think, and there's other examples like myself who just took years and years to sort of develop. And I think it just shows the passion and determination that you have to just push through and keep chasing your dreams. So I think it's a really great example for many young riders in Australia too.
So what does a guy like Lucas Hamilton take out of it? Because Lucas actually had a really good ride. He finished 13th or 14th overall. It was a really good performance, but it doesn't get a mention because we've got an Aussie who won the race. So given that he has been toe-to-toe with Jai for most of his earlier career, what does he take out of this result?
Yeah, I think he can take a lot of confidence out of the result and seeing what Jai could do. And Lucas knows that he's on that caliber of Jai, or he can be. He obviously went to the Giro more in the supporting role to start with, and with Simon Yates there as the leader for Team Bike Exchange. So I think, in the end, I think, as you said, he came 13th, just outside the top 10. And I did hear an interview with him saying it's all money in the bank. It's all, you have to get through all these Grand Tours at a young age and sort of build on that for the next years. So I really hope that he can then step into his next Grand Tour with a little bit more confidence and know that he really can be there.
So in the context of all the great results in Australian cycling, where do you think this one sits, Jai Hindley winning the Giro d'Italia?
Oh, I think it's right up there. I mean, obviously we always talk about the Tour de France being the pinnacle, but I think the Giro is not very far behind that at all. And I think for any cycling fans, we know how hard the Giro is. It's always such a hard and epic race, and probably a little bit less controlled than what we see at the Tour de France. I think it's right up there. I think for the Australian public, I think we mentioned is sort of struggling to get that into the mainstream media and to convey that. But yeah, I think it's right up there. And in terms of Australian cycling, he'd have to be up there for the Oppie Award now too at the end of the
He's
year.
got to
So
be
I think
he's the clubhouse leader.
he's miles ahead of everyone else at the moment.
You're going to have to win the Tour de France to get the Oppie this year. That's what it's going to take.
Well, there's my motivation. No.
There you go. Just to beat Jai to the Oppie. I've been trying to explain it to people who aren't into cycling. And, you know that my other sport that I love is tennis. So Wimbledon is the biggest one to win there. And I've said to people, so Wimbledon is the biggest. That's the Tour de France. And then say if an Aussie won Roland Garros, that it's a huge result, right? If they win the French Open. Let's imagine that it's the first Aussie to ever win it. You know, the fact that Australians have been going there so long, first ones were 70 years ago. There was a group that went across there. Peter Anthony, Eddie Smith, John Beasley, and one other whose name escapes me. You know, Cadell took the leader's jersey for the first time 20 years ago. It's a massive, massive result.
Yeah, I totally. And when you put it in that frame as well, in terms of how many years we've had Australians going there trying to chase that dream in the Maglia Rosa, then I think that just says it all. So massive result. And I think there's a lot of excitement about what he can do in the future.
A lot of excitement at your team as well. Alex Manley, she's been over in Germany recently, just finishing on the weekend in the Thuringen Tour, which is 6 stages. And Alex was that greedy. She won 4 stages plus the general classification. And another one of your teammates, Georgia Baker, won another one of the stages. So 6 stages and your team won 5.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice that they gave 1 stage away.
Very generous of them.
No, very, very impressive riding. I think we were the only World Tour team that raced there. But I mean, there's still
more pressure?
I think definitely more pressure going into it. The girls knew that everyone would look at them if there was a scenario that had to be, to chase back a break or anything like that. But I mean, the quality of field there was still really high, so not taking anything at all away from the results. I think the way they raced as a team and the way they were also adaptable on the road. The first stage, they lost Jess Allen to quite a bad crash. Georgia Baker came down in that too. And also, I think they were racing for Ruby Roseman Gannon at the start of the week, but Ruby realised that actually Alex was going that little bit better than her. So I just think that adaptability and the mature decision from Ruby as well to say, hey, okay, actually Alex is going a bit better. We're going to race for her here. And I think the way they were able to work as a team was really impressive there. And also, really nice, I think, in stage 5, which is the stage that they did not win, is that Yulia Birokova from RKS Sam6, she's a younger Ukrainian rider who actually took the stage there, had a 99-kilometre solo breakaway, which if we didn't have Annemiek van Vleuten doing the 100K solo breakaway at Worlds, would have been one of the longest solo breakaways in women's cycling. So, I was watching the last bit of that stage and she was doing about 60 RPM up the final climb, just trying to get to the line. And I mean, I'm obviously cheering for my team, but at the same time, I was just cheering
a little bit?
Cheering a little bit for her, just like, come on, just put it down a gear, please. But so I think that was a really nice result for her. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's a fantastic result. What I also liked about the team, you just listed some of the riders from your team that were there, and it was the track program basically that were all there together. So they've got a really good relationship, and that maturity of saying, yeah, I'm meant to be the leader, but perhaps you're going better. That really bodes well for the culture within the team.
I think so, yeah. And that's what's really been nice having, the addition of Alex, Georgia and Ruby this year, is that they are familiar with each other. They know how to race. And, it's just that theme of just wanting to get the best result for the team, not the best result individually. And so I think that's really nice for the culture and, something that really came to the fore in Thuringen, I think.
Yeah. So what does that do for the morale in the team for the riders that weren't there?
I think the morale for the team, it boosts everyone. I mean, we were all, luckily for us, there was live coverage of the race throughout the whole week. So I know most of us were sitting there watching it and cheering. And I think I mentioned before on the whole bike exchange team, we have over 100 people on a WhatsApp group. So they were always, our team doctor was sending photos to the group, all proud, and the mechanic, and, everyone was sort of becoming involved and cheering and celebrating the results. So I think, sometimes you, as a cyclist, or as a professional cyclist, sometimes you get a win and sometimes you just let it go too soon and you don't really realize, you don't appreciate it, I think, until maybe some time's passed and you haven't had a win for a long time and you think, oh, maybe I should have acknowledged that a little bit more. So I think, these kind of groups or, having teammates being really happy for you reminds you that, wins are not easy to come by in Europe. So appreciate them when you get them.
Oh, they're really hard to come by. There's people that have finished on podiums in Grand Tours who have not won an individual race. It's hard to win any race in Europe. Backtracking ever so slightly on the topic of boosting your morale or having a positive influence by the results of other riders within the team, one of the significant results in my mind coming out of the Giro d'Italia in the men's race was seeing that Simon Yates won the first individual time trial and Matteo Sorbero won the final individual time trial. So that must give you a lot of confidence that you're on good equipment.
Yeah, that was amazing to see the time trial results. And I know it's something the team's really invested a lot more in, especially this year, our partnership with Giant and with Liv. And we're really lucky to have Marco Pinotti on the team as director sportive and like the time trial genius. So I just loved actually after both Simon and Matteo's wins, we're seeing the interviews with Marco Pinotti just looking amazingly proud. And he's put so much work into this. And I know he's the time trial guru and the one who he turns up at every important time trial of the year, and he's the head DS or head coach and analysing and giving input into the time trial. So I felt a little bit proud watching that and just happy for him because he's such a nice guy. And I know how hard he works in that role.
So you know that Bike Exchange is really optimistic about its chances if Marco Pinotti turns up.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll be watching for Marco.
Him, then everyone should be scared.
Well, on the topic, what about the hour world record for Ellen van Dijk, 49.254 kilometres in an hour around the velodrome in Switzerland? That blows my hair back.
Yeah, that was amazing. I think anyone who knows Ellen, and I've spoken about it with a few different riders now who were sort of thinking about doing the hour record, and then they heard Ellen was doing it and they thought, damn, like
missed the boat.
We wanted to do it before Ellen did it because everyone knew she would do a great time. And for anyone who's watched any of the road races with Ellen van Dijk in them, you should know that Ellen's worth about 2 or 3 teammates in one rider. She's amazingly strong. Having said that, the hour record for anyone who doesn't know what it is, who's listening, it's basically how far you can ride on a velodrome, one line for 1 hour. So quite different to just saying it's a 1 hour time trial. I mean, Ellen's the world time trial champion, so obviously she's the best in that discipline. But the difference with the hour record is you have to be in that aero position. There are no corners where you can get out of the bars, rest your shoulders. It's just in that position the whole time, and so much comes down to your aerodynamic, your CDA number, how aerodynamic you are, and she would know this is my ideal position and I need to stay in this position. I can't move my head, I can't move my shoulders back, anything. Just keep the power going.
Explain the CDA number.
Oh gosh, I'm not much of an expert on that, but I do know it's the number that says how aerodynamic you are in your position. So
it's essentially your drag.
Essentially, you probably know it better than me, the drag number. So always aiming to get the lowest number they can where they can still produce the power. So that involves a lot of time in the wind tunnel, getting your optimal position. I think they had they were also talking about they used the helmet, the skin suit, the booties, all of this impacts on this. And I think just that with equipment alone, she was already getting 600 meters extra, I think they said in the commentary from that. So she would have had all this in her head and known that. And I'm disappointed. It was at the velodrome, only 10 kilometers from where I live in Switzerland, but I was actually in Girona on the day. So, I mean, we're obviously on different trade teams, but the thing I loved was how much support she was getting from, particularly I noticed in the women's peloton, how many people were posting like good luck or, get behind Ellen. And I think in this moment, people are going to can appreciate how amazing and how hard this is. We always say it's a special person that wants to target the hour record. So definitely not for everybody.
Well, which it is a special person. You touched on it a bit, the road individual time trial. It's not just about being in that one position on the track and being able to change. There's also the psychological break of in a road time trial, you've got to punch it over this climb and you can get a little bit of recuperation on the way down the other side. The psychological break going through a couple of corners from just being on the pedals all the time. So that ability to maintain that level of concentration for 1 hour. In fact, Spratty, I challenge anybody listening to the podcast to concentrate solid for 1 hour at work and not get distracted by an email or a social media post or going for a toilet break or going and grabbing a coffee, 1 hour of solid concentration in itself is really challenging.
Yeah, exactly. And then add in riding in a circle for 1 hour as well. Essentially, I haven't spoken to Ellen, but I would love to know if you get a little bit dizzy, or if she just got to a point where she didn't know what's happening, or I mean, I'm sure with her team of supporters, I mean, I think she put on her Instagram story a information sheet, and it was like riders, Ellen van Dijk, support staff, and there are about 15 or 20 staff members on her support team. So I'm sure they would have had some good strategies to get through it. But
big
amazing,
operation. Big operation. The other, just to close it out, the other thing I really liked about it was in the week or the fortnight almost leading up to it, she was doing a social media post celebrating every other woman who had previously held the hour world record, and I thought that was pretty cool of her.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's typical Ellen as well, always humble and always appreciating what other riders have done. And I actually really enjoyed that too, because I hadn't realised how many riders had done it. And even people like when I saw Evie Stevens had done it, I thought, oh yeah, that's right, Evie had done it. And of course I remember Bridie O'Donnell being Australian. I remember when Bridie had done it, and then just to see who had done it over time. And I think that I also agree that was a nice touch.
There was a good history lesson. Going away from the velodrome and something completely different, one of the biggest names in the sport for more than the past decade has been Peter Sagan. He's on a new team this year, and he's 4th of July. He's off to the United States, and he's riding Unbound. He's doing the shorter version of it, and he's racing on the gravel. Any chance that you're going to ride a few gravel events? Maybe you can do drops and hoods when you've retired?
Well, I do have a gravel bike, actually. I bought my gravel bike just as COVID hit, so I'm getting out on the gravel. I always do love getting out on my gravel bike, so I wouldn't say no to some gravel events in the future. But very interesting that Sagan's doing that. I think the gravel is hard racing. I know I've spoken a bit to Tiff Cromwell, who alongside in Canyon SRAM and alongside Canyon, that she's sort of signed up to doing quite a few of the gravel races in America, and she's told me they're just some of the hardest races you can do. And unlike on the road races, the men and the women are starting together, and she said it's been quite challenging because they have at the end they have the women's category and the men's category. So sometimes some of the top women will have men racing with the men. The men will stop and get the biddens and the food for them, and then they'll come back and give them. So the female rider never actually has to stop. So that's been a challenge for Tiff as an individual, and not having sort of teammates on the road.
She needs some support staff. And
she needs support staff
to be super domestics riding a bike.
Exactly. So, but I mean, I think some of the hardest racing you can do. I think we both saw the footage of Tiff finishing a 200-kilometre gravel 7-8 hour ride, empty. And just across the line, just completely empty. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Sagan can do it. Obviously, his bike handling skills are some of the best you'll ever find. So I think that won't be a challenge for him so much, but probably more just the intensity of the whole event.
Yeah, I like that it is all in together in many respects, but I don't think it makes for a fair race amongst the women if some of the women have got men in the race who can play that support role and some of the other women don't.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, I'm not sure if that's in every event, but certainly Tiff was telling me some stories from last year that was definitely a challenge for her. At some point in a 7 or 8 hour, you have to stop and, get a drink or get some more supplies. Yeah, nature break, exactly. So it's almost unavoidable.
Well, Drops and Hoods is based up in the Snowy Mountains where Le Tapestry was held in Jindabyne previously. And from the 11th to the 13th, they're doing an event up there where there is a road option, there's a gravel option as well. We might have to get ourselves up there at some point, Spratty, and have a go at it. Maybe I'll just commentate on it.
No, you can't backpedal there. You'll be on the bike too.
All right. Oh, okay. We'll lock it in at some stage. I'm going to have to start doing some training. And you're doing some training now. You're getting ready for your Giro d'Italia. What's on the program?
Yeah, that's right. So I just finished a block of racing in Spain, had a few easy days at home, and now off to Stelvio. So staying at the top of Stelvio Pass for 5-6 days. So that's at 2,800 metres.
Ooh. So
I'm there for 5-6 days, just in the beginning. Normally I've just got some easier training days, so it's just nice to acclimatise at that level. And then after that I head to Livigno, which is at 1,800 metres for 2.5 weeks almost. So then I get a really good training block in for our Giro, which is coming up at the end of June. So there's some quite very hard stages this year, a lot of longer climbing. So that's sort of going to be the big focus for me in the next block, and just looking to step up a level.
So what are the sort of the rides that you do when you're at altitude camping at the Stelvio?
So I do a lot of longer climbing. So if we always sort of look ahead to the Giro and what the course is like, and there are a lot of longer climbs this year. So I do a lot of, I guess, strength-based work to start with, more just SE type work, just getting used to that climbing efficiency again. And then
how many minutes is an interval for a strength endurance effort, and what sort of cadence are you doing?
Yeah, so I'll do 10 to 15 minute blocks, and
asking for a friend, preparing for a gravel event.
I'll send you the bill later via my coach. No, 10 to 15 minutes blocks normally. I might do that 4 times in a 4-hour ride. And then normally, we do a 3-day block, 4-day block, depending. Normally more working into 4-day blocks heading into the Giro now, because I need to be able to be on for more days than just 2 or 3. More longer climbing, so I might do 40-minute climbs and sort of break that up into, might do like 10 minutes harder, 10 minutes a bit less hard, and sort of working on climbs like that. So it's a lot of it. Sort of realized I'm coming back from my injury, and I just feel like I need to work on everything at the moment. I'm a bit behind where I sort of want to be, but so we're sort of just looking at it and saying we need to prioritize a bit with what the key moments are in the Giro and also in the Women's Tour de France. So sort of headed in that direction, and just trying to really work on that threshold climbing at the moment. So a lot of pain coming up.
What's it feel like when you first go to altitude, when you go to 2,800 meters? Do you really notice it?
Yeah, I think, I do notice it when I first get there, particularly when I go to Stelvio, which is a higher, with 2,800 meters, and things like walking up the stairs, I feel like I'm puffing more. I can notice that there's less oxygen in the air. I don't sleep as well. I have weird, we call them altitude dreams, where you just have weird, crazy dreams about anything. I just think you're in a different phase of sleep a lot of the time, and it's just a bit harder to sleep. Your body's under a little bit more stress.
The dream side of it is not something that I was aware of with altitude.
Yeah, there you go. So we often joke about that. You wake up and you think, that was weird, but then you can't remember what it was to tell anyone what the dream was. So that's one. And normally when I first get to Stelvio, so I've got my ergo with me, and I'll just spend the first few days just on the ergo and just stay purely at 2,800 meters for a few days. And I find that my heart rate is normally one zone higher than what it is normally.
Yeah,
so I'll do it for the same power
output.
Yeah, one zone higher. So normally for the first week at least, I'll do a lot of my training based more on heart rate rather than looking at the power. So just letting the body acclimatize, and then you see naturally over the time at altitude it all starts to even out again, and you can produce the power that you want for the heart rate that it would normally be. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake that first timers to altitude will make, is getting there and being excited to do all the mountain passes they can and killing themselves on Stelvio and Livigno.
Carried away.
And they're the ones you see on about week, sort of halfway through week 2, that start digging their hole deeper and deeper. So that's my top tip.
Great, take it easy. So, and what does it feel when you come back down to sea level?
Normally, for the first couple of days, I'm normally quite tired when I first come down. And I mean, that's normally related to I've just trained really hard until I've come down. And then after that, normally when I've responded well, then I know I can go out and do efforts. And it just, the whole idea is that, when you're doing the same efforts at sea level, that it's essentially easier because you have more oxygen in the air, or more oxygen available. So that's what I really notice, is that normally my power outputs can go up and my heart rate is a bit lower than what it would be. So that's when I know I've done a really good training block. So, and I think it's something, the first years I did it, not like Annemiek van Vleuten's always gone to altitude to prepare, but not that many other female cyclists I'm talking of were sort of doing that. But these days you're seeing everybody go there. I've seen like Elisa Longo Borghini's in Sestriere, Marta Cavalli's off to altitude now. I think you'll see everybody preparing for Giro. Tour de France will include an altitude block at some point. So
when Annemiek was doing it, it was an advantage. But now you're doing it just to be on a level playing field.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one way to look at it for sure. I think everyone's seen.
If you don't do it, you're going to be behind the 8 ball, aren't you?
Yeah, well, it's certainly more difficult. I mean, it's not to say, I think one aspect of an altitude camp is just the training camp effect, is that you're just there solely to train. You get a good training block. You're really focused for that block. So I think there are some people who don't always go to altitude. I mean, Lizzie Dignan's a good example of someone that doesn't, I don't think, goes to altitude often, but she can really do that focused training block and perform really well. So it's not an essential, but it's definitely something. I think for me personally, I think I respond really well to it. And I've seen that in my biggest Giros where I've had a really good block before the level I can lift to for the actual race. So.
Have you ever had the altitude tent at home when you're at sea level and had the altitude tent to sleep in?
I've never tried the altitude tent, no, but I have back in the day when we used to have camps at the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra. They actually have an altitude house there. So they have a house with 5 different rooms and they can set the rooms to whatever altitude you want. So we used to go there and I think they set the room to 3,000 meters. So you'd essentially try to spend as many hours as you can in the room. So I mean, sleeping and recovering between sessions. Then you come out and train around Canberra in the day.
So
and
if
then
you
go
want
back
some really
into your
bizarre
house.
dreams, if you want some really bizarre dreams, you just crank up the altitude.
Yep, exactly. So, and then you have a little notebook and write when you wake up and think, wow, that was weird. Just quickly write down what it was and go back to sleep.
So you can tell the story the next morning.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, Spratty, it's been a treat as always to have a chat to you. Make the most of that training camp. We can't wait to see the Giro d'Italia. What day did you say it starts?
It starts at the very end of June.
Okay. And
28th, I think, from memory.
And then over to the Tour de France.
So then a short break and then off to the Tour de France after that. So big July coming up for me. Can't
Sensational.
Wait.
All the best, Spratty. You've been listening to Cycling Insights, the podcast that is brought to you by Letap Australia and Drops and Hoods. And whether you're a Tour de France fan, love riding with your mates, or you just want to challenge yourself a little bit extra, maybe ride a little bit of gravel, take a look at dropsandhoods.com or visit letapaustralia.com. And tell your friends about the podcast and you'll find out what's happening inside the peloton with Amanda Spratt. Bye for now.